Hello and welcome to the Simplify webinar series. I'm David McBee, Director of Training. It's 2021 and OTT-CTV is bigger than it's ever been. So we decided to put everything you need to know to sell OTT-CTV advertising into this comprehensive webinar. Yes, we've done OTT-CTV webinars in the past, and I encourage you to dive into the Bullseye archives to check them out if you haven't seen them. And no, this won't be the last OTT-CTV webinar we create. The industry is still in its infancy, and the technology is changing and improving every day. There will be more to talk about next month, and for months and probably years after that. But for today, if you want to sell OTT-CTV advertising, you're in the right place. Now, some of this will be review, and some of it will be new, but I promise you this, you will get a nugget or three that will help you on future sales calls. In fact, I'm offering a money-back guarantee. If you don't learn something new from this webinar, I'll refund what you paid to attend it. See, now you know you're in for some good training. Well, let's get started. What is the difference between OTT and CTV? What does the combined term OTT-CTV really refer to? According to nearly every source that I checked on, OTT, which stands for over the top, refers to the content or shows that we watch online. And CTV, which stands for connected TV, is the device used to watch the content. The IAB defines CTV specifically as a smart TV or a TV connected to the internet via an Amazon Fire Stick, a Roku, an Apple TV, or a gaming console, or one of those devices. But it should also be pointed out that OTT can be watched on mobile devices and laptops. To differentiate, here at Simplify, we call that OTT small screen delivery. Or said another way, we watch OTT programs on CTVs. OTT programs might be shows on Disney Plus or on demand through a cable provider that we watch on a connected TV or any internet-connected device. Here at Simplify, we nearly always combine OTT and CTV into the term OTT-CTV to refer to long-form episodic programming that is watched on smartphones, tablets, computers, and internet-connected televisions. Got it? All right, let's move on. So I've got some stats for you. I mean, you have to have been living under a rock to not know how big a deal OTT-CTV has become, but I'm going to share these stats with you because, maybe your advertisers have been living under rocks. In 2018, the average daily OTT-CTV viewing in the US was 46 minutes. Today, OTT-CTV viewers are watching 180 minutes of programming per day. More importantly, ad spend is following this trend in a big way. Advertising budgets have only begun to move from traditional TV, even as its viewership diminishes and OTT-CTV grows. This discrepancy between consumer behavior and budget allocation is overdue for a correction. In 2021, look for advertisers to start moving traditional TV budgets to OTT-CTV, especially as they start to understand how to leverage data for better audience targeting while still achieving scale with OTT-CTV. In fact, OTT-CTV ad spending is predicted to hit $6.69 billion in 2021. It's like Colorado right before the gold rush, people. A lot of money will be made in this space in 2021, and it's yours for the taking if you commit to understanding and selling OTT-CTV. Here's a stat from eMarketer's Q3 Digital Video Trends Report. OTT-CTV advertising in the US has increased 25% in 2020, with ad-supported video on demand, AVODs, revenue up 31%. We'll talk more about AVODs here in a bit, but it's important to understand that they are growing significantly because when discussing OTT-CTV, it's the big players like the Hulus and Disney Pluses and the Netflix that people usually think of first. Meanwhile, in a year where everyone is watching their budgets, AVODs like Pluto are exploding. And speaking of Pluto's growth, it's worth mentioning that Pluto TV grew the number of monthly active users 57% between Q3 2019 and Q3 2020 to reach 28.4 million subscribers. Now, let me put that into perspective for you. It's estimated that the very popular OTT app HBO Max has 28.7 million subscribers. That's barely more than Pluto. Now, I'll just let that sink in for a minute. And with that, let's transition into what I think needs to be a part of every OTT CTV conversation: SVODs and AVODs. Let's start with some quick definitions. SVODs are subscription-based video-on-demand OTT services like Netflix, Disney+, HBO Max, all commercial-free, but also Hulu, YouTube TV, and Amazon Prime. These SVODs either don't have advertising or, for the most part, have a closed system where advertisers must buy from them direct. Ad buys are usually based on programming. Then there are SVODs that are available direct to consumer via vMVPD bundles. That's virtual multi-channel video programming distributors. These are OTT services that provide viewers with content from broadcast and cable networks, as well as streaming providers. Paramount Network, Discovery, HGTV, and other channels leverage advertising to allow viewers to watch for free. Okay, technically they're not free because the viewer is paying a cable subscription. If you're talking to an advertiser who hasn't completely cut the cord, but does utilize OTT through their cable provider, these are the OTT services they are probably familiar with. Now, if all that seems pretty simple, let me complicate it for you. Let's talk about CBS. A viewer with a cable subscription can usually access CBS All Access with their subscription login information. So like if you have Comcast but are watching CBS on OTT, you log in with your Comcast or maybe your AT&T credentials. For those who have completely cut the cord and want to watch CBS content, there's an SVOD version of CBS All Access with no commercials for $9.99 a month, and an AVOD version of CBS All Access for $5.99 a month with commercials. What's an AVOD? AVODs are ad-supported video-on-demand services, so any service that is either free or sometimes less expensive thanks to the placement of ads. Then there's another term you may hear, FAST. And I don't mean fast like a Ferrari. In our conversation, FAST stands for Free Ad-Supported TV. Some FAST AVODs are Pluto and Tubi. More and more of these are popping up every day, and their popularity is growing thanks to all the cord cutting that is happening and the subscription fatigue we experience after subscribing to so many SVODs. Okay, that is a lot of acronyms. Now, why am I including these definitions in this training? Why do I think this should be a part of every OTT CTV conversation that you have with advertisers? Well, because most people who watch OTT CTV are unfamiliar with the ecosystem, and that can make it difficult to sell. They may be used to buying traditional TV, or maybe they've never bought TV at all. Maybe they watch a lot of OTT CTV. Maybe it's new to them. So educating them on the space overall will help them feel more comfortable buying, and it should make it easier to explain reports when it comes time to renew their campaigns. I had one advertiser say to me that if he couldn't buy ads on Netflix or Hulu, then he wasn't interested. I was so dumbfounded by this statement because, well, A, Netflix doesn't even have commercials, so there's that. And B, Hulu was just starting to gain popularity at the time. They weren't even selling direct to advertisers, and only the big national brands were advertising there. But to this guy, Netflix and Hulu were OTT CTV. That's all he watched, and so that's all he imagined everyone else watched too. When I tried to tell him about AVODs and a targeted audience through programmatic, well, I might as well have been speaking another language. So, yes, I think this should be a conversation during the sales pitch. Certainly, AVODs and the programmatic ecosystem have grown significantly since that conversation. Consider what I just told you about Pluto having nearly as many subscribers as HBO Max as evidence of that fact. But also, I think we can agree that the more we dive into OTT CTV viewing, the more we discover that AVODs are everywhere. In a past webinar, I talked about all the free OTT services that come with new smart TVs or already installed on Rokus and Amazon Fire Sticks. You can't hardly plug one of these devices in without being introduced to a dozen AVODs and fasts that you maybe hadn't heard of before cutting the cord. And then there's voice search. Your teenage daughter discovers how great the movie Clueless is, so she talks into the voice remote saying, "Movies like Clueless." When she's presented with 80s teen movies, several of them are available for free via popular AVODs. Meanwhile, she doesn't care if she has to install a new OTT app or watch a handful of commercials to watch Lindsay Lohan in Mean Girls. I want you to have conversations like this with your advertiser. Ask them if they have ever heard of AVODs like Pluto, if they watch ad-supported OTT CTV, or if they only have Netflix and Hulu. If they haven't, give them a demo. No, I don't expect you to haul your 70-inch smart TV into their office, but you can pull out your phone and open the Pluto app. Introduce it to them. Encourage them to try it out. They may go home and watch a favorite movie and see for themselves just exactly where their ads might be delivered. And by the way, even if you don't need to have this conversation to sell OTT CTV, you will eventually share with your clients their monthly report, usually showing that their ads were delivered on OTT channels that they haven't heard of. So talking about ad delivery in advance will make it a lot easier to have that conversation and win the renewal. I want to shift gears here a bit and talk about the value of video as it compares to display, specifically static display ads. Because video costs more than display, sometimes as much as 4 to 10 times more, a lot depends on reseller markups, sellers and advertisers alike want to know, is video 4 to 10 times more effective? Is it? Assuming that the same targeting is used to reach the same relevant audience, is a 15 or 30-second video ad worth that much more than its display ad counterpart? Let's consider a few things, starting with simple eyeball time. That's a phrase, that's an actual phrase used by website and app developers, which refers to the amount of time their content is in front of the viewer. I did a lot of research to find out how long the average display ad is viewed, and there was not a solid consensus, to say the least. Most articles were obsessed with the definition of viewability, which says that an ad is considered viewed if it was on the screen for longer than a second. Other research claimed that display ads are in view for up to 10 seconds before the user scrolls by them or advances to the next level, as if, in the case of a mobile app or something like that. So, using my mad research and math skills, I'm going to estimate that display ads are viewed for about 5 seconds each for the purposes of this example. Now, the data junkies out there, especially those at Simplify, will not appreciate my inexact estimates, but I contend that it will still work for this comparison. So, if you buy the idea that a display ad is viewed for 5 seconds, then a 15-second non-skippable OTT CTV ad would be at least 3 times better, right? Because it gets 3 times more eyeball time. A 30-second commercial would be 6 times better. Even standard pre-roll ads, believe it or not, I have to say standard pre-roll because there's also something called OTT pre-roll, which we are not talking about. Anyway, a standard pre-roll video ad, even one that is skipped after the first 5 seconds, is at least as effective as a display ad before getting skipped, if all we're considering is eyeball time. But there's a lot more to a video than just screen time, right? Videos leverage sight, sound, motion, and emotion. I could probably spend an hour on this concept alone, but let's cut to the heart of the argument. Which is more effective, a billboard or a commercial? Or said another way, if you had to sell something to someone, would you prefer to do it only with a visual, or would you prefer to talk? Are you familiar with the phrase facts tell, stories sell? A video advertisement can tell a story about the product or service in a way that still imagery just can't. Bottom line, the value of video compared to still imagery should be obvious to anyone who has ever seen billboards and commercials. So even though I could go on and on about this topic, I'm going to stop and move on to the next bullet. Real estate. The next thing worth pointing out when comparing video to display is real estate, as in how much of the screen's real estate is taken up by the ad. With display, the ad normally appears within a news feed or over to the side on desktop and laptop screens. What percentage of the screen would you say these ads take up? 10%? Maybe 20%? On mobile phones, the ad can appear within the content or sometimes between rounds of a game. It gets a larger percentage of the real estate on mobile. I guess this one is taking up maybe 30% of the screen. But it's rare that it takes up the whole screen. When an OTT CTV ad is running, it gets 100% of the screen. There's literally nothing else on the screen that could take away the person's attention. Unless they look away, the ad is in front of them, and they are seeing it. Except for the rare full-page takeover ads, display can't claim that kind of real estate. Heck, an ad can appear on a person's computer screen next to an article they are reading, and they could maybe not even see it at all. If that's a concern your advertiser has, then OTT CTV is going to be very exciting for them. Now, at the time of this production, the majority of OTT CTV ads are non-skippable. There may come a day when that's not the case, but for now, watching ads is how consumers pay for ad-supported video on-demand services, so they're not skippable. That is incredibly valuable to an advertiser who wants to ensure that prospects are seeing their message and aren't sure if someone is just scrolling past their ads without noticing them. Before we move on, let me ask you this. Did we answer the question, is video more effective than display? You tell me, are you convinced? More importantly, do you think these examples are enough to convince your advertisers? My take is that we kind of proved it, but not 100%. I provided anecdotal evidence at best that a video is more effective than a display ad. And that may be enough to get your advertiser to invest 4 to 10 times more for video than display. But let's be clear. The only true way to compare video to display is to run comparable campaigns using the same targeting and then compare the results. And because OTT CTV ads can't be clicked, the measurement of success has to be something other than CTR. So if you're measuring something like foot traffic or online conversions, you could run a display campaign and an OTT CTV campaign and compare the results to find out. Short of running that test, which I suspect most advertisers won't invest in, you'll have to talk about eyeball time, sight, sound, motion, and emotion, real estate, and the value of non-skippable ads. Since television's inception, ad buys have been based on programming and the assumed audience that is watching the shows. This is still true with a lot of OTT CTV buys today. Advertisers who buy this way think they should run their commercials on certain channels and are inclined to buy TV the way they always have, based on programming. Want to reach athletes? Advertise on sports. Want to reach intellectuals? Advertise on news channels. That makes perfect sense, right? Or does it? The problem is that a lot of intellectuals watch sports, and there are plenty of athletes who watch the news. While the programming implies a certain demographic of the viewer, it's not 100%. Display advertising started out this way too. A decade ago, advertisers bought display ads based on the popularity of websites and the content on those sites. If they wanted to reach athletes, they'd advertise on sites about sports or health and fitness. And if they wanted to reach intellectuals, they'd advertise on news websites. But advertisers came to realize that there was a better way to identify their target market with online behavioral data, location data, and offline demographic data. They stopped worrying about where their ads appeared and more about to whom their ads appeared. Today, programmatic ad buys dominate how display ads are bought and sold. In fact, advertisers spent $63 billion on programmatic display in 2020, and it is predicted that that space will see nearly $100 billion in 2022. Programmatic reigns supreme as the choice for targeted display ads. Will history repeat itself with OTT CTV? Let's see. This is the part of the webinar where I admit for the 10th time that I'm a huge fan of The Bachelor. I tell you this not to increase the mockery I already get for being a member of Bachelor Nation, but rather to point out that I am probably not the demographic that advertisers who buy ad space during The Bachelor are interested in reaching. Sure, most of the people watching The Bachelor are probably women, but I contend that the old model of targeting based on programming is obsolete. That OTT CTV and the data that can be used to create target audiences makes it obsolete, just as it did with display all those years ago. You see, the same technology that is used to target a display campaign can now be used to target prospects on streaming television. That means that advertisers can show their OTT CTV ads to people who have visited their website, people who are searching the web for their products and services, people who are reading content related to the advertiser's industry, people who visit real-world locations like the advertiser's competitors, people who are on a mailing list, and people who fit a certain demographic. Imagine creating that audience, and then consider the question that most advertisers ask. On which streaming service should I advertise? The answer? Whatever streaming service these people happen to be watching. If you're selling OTT CTV to a digital buyer, this is a pretty easy conversation to have. You've no doubt seen this very slide in past webinars and recognize it as the audience that can be targeted with display advertising. So if your advertiser has ever bought targeted display, well, they're used to targeting with data and should easily realize the value of audience targeting on OTT CTV. If you're talking to someone who has purchased television in the past in the traditional sense, based on programming, GRP, and Nielsen audience data, then this is a departure from what they know. So I'm going to give you a little trick for making this easier, and it starts by understanding that that advertiser, the traditional TV advertiser, basically just wants to target a demographic. That's really all it is. They say, I want to reach affluent women. And the linear TV seller finds shows that are associated with affluent women, perhaps even a show like The Bachelor. Easy peasy. All this talk of data can confuse them and even scare them off. They don't want to hear about keywords or lat-longs or geofencing or addressable schmeshable. They just want to target affluent women for crying out loud. Okay, no problem. Guess what our addressable audience curation tool does? It locates and creates demographic audiences, like, for example, affluent women. Yes, it's more complicated than choosing shows that women watch. It's actually quite a bit more complicated when you really break it down. In fact, let's take a moment and just look under the hood, shall we? We use offline purchase data and publicly available data to create a list of women within the advertiser's target geography. We add additional offline data elements to make the list more specific. Affluent, for example, could mean that we target by the size of their home or maybe their household income. We upload that list of addresses into our system, and then we draw geofences around each address based on Plat-Line data. We look for smartphone lat-long data inside those geofences, and when we find it, we use cross-device matching to see all the devices associated with that address. And then we deliver ads to the smartphones, tablets, computers, and CTVs within the addresses. Or said another way, we target affluent women. And we can do it better than by guessing who is watching what. So make audience targeting a part of every OTT CTV pitch. And depending on how digitally savvy your advertiser is, that conversation can be all about the many simplified tactics at your disposal, or it can be about the demographic that they would normally reach by assuming an audience based on programming. Either way, we can deliver. P.S. In an upcoming webinar, we'll be presenting you with strategies for selling OTT CTV to traditional TV buyers beyond the one I just shared with you. I've given you the short version, but we're going to deep dive to discuss things like GRP and Nielsen audiences. Okay, how to make OTT CTV affordable. Depending on how much you retail display and OTT CTV, the difference can be significant. For our resellers, it's not uncommon for OTT CTV to cost 4 times as much as display. So let's consider a strategy that we can use to make OTT CTV more affordable. Now, short of not marking up the retail price of the impressions, which you, the listener, probably have no control over, the strategy I'm starting to see a lot is this. Include display or standard pre-roll advertising with OTT CTV ad impressions and sell an average CPM. I'll use an example here. Let's say you sell display for $10 CPM, pre-roll for $20, and OTT CTV for $40. These are just numbers that I made up, so feel free to insert your own retail rates. Now, let's say we've gotten an advertiser to agree to a campaign with 250,000 impressions. If that's all display, it's $2,500. If it's all OTT CTV, it's $10,000. But what if it was half display and half OTT CTV? Now the cost of the campaign comes out to $6,250, or said another way, a combined CPM of only $25. See what I did there? Technically, it's 125,000 display ads at $10 CPM for $1,250 and 125,000 OTT CTV ads at $40 CPM for $5,000. But when combined, it's 250,000 display and OTT CTV ads for a $25 CPM or $6,250. Or maybe they don't want any display at all. There really is a lot of value in standard pre-roll video. It may not be long-form episodic content. It may not be full screen on a big screen TV, but it's still sight, sound, motion, and emotion. It can still be non-skippable, or at least 5 seconds of viewing before a skipped ad if that's how you buy it. Combining those $20 CPM video pre-roll ads with $40 CPM OTT CTV ads can bring the mean cost to $30 CPM, which ain't bad for an all-video campaign. Of course, be sure to check with your leadership before pitching campaigns this way, okay? Hopefully they'll agree that combining pre-roll and or display or even your O&O with OTT CTV can significantly bring down the overall CPM of a campaign, making it easier for you to sell it. What if your advertiser doesn't have video creative? Should you even bother to pitch an OTT CTV campaign? Sure you should. You just have to add the step of helping them get the creative built. Now, I've seen our partners handle this in 3 ways. Number 1, they hire employees and create a division that can produce video ad creative for their advertisers. In other words, they bring creative video production in-house. Number 2, They find local videographers and contract them for ad creation. Some of them white label the videographer and even mark up the cost of production in order to monetize this part of the campaign. Others simply introduce the advertiser to the videographer and let them work out the costs and production. And number 3, they point their advertiser to an online resource that leverages templates to create video creative or can send a videographer to their location. Here are a handful of companies that do exactly that. I encourage you to check them out. Now, I realize this adds one more step to your process, but I hope you'll agree that helping your advertiser over this hump will lead to big, awesome OTT CTV campaigns down the road. We're heading into the home stretch, and we haven't even talked about one of the key differentiators that OTT CTV has over linear TV and other traditional advertising: reporting. Now, normally when I talk about OTT CTV reporting, I share with you a list of things that you can find in our reporting. Today, I'm going to show you some example reports that are commonly utilized by Simplify clients on their OTT CTV campaigns so you can see for yourself. Okay, here's our first example. It includes spend and impressions, and then it gets right into the really good stuff: verified walk-ins and cost per site visit. For those of you wondering how we do that, I'll explain how we get those metrics here shortly. Moving on, you can see that this report includes walk-ins by day of the week and walk-ins by time of day. Scrolling down, we have a performance summary, verified walk-ins by zip code, and walk-ins by geofence. Then it transitions to the top 10 domain/apps where the ads were delivered and impressions by hour of the day. Here you'll see performance by device make, video ad performance, and video engagement rate. Let's look at another one. This one contains a lot of the same metrics, but also breaks out small screen delivery from large screen delivery. Now, I find that metric somewhat interesting, but I think total reach, total visits, and cost per visit are much more telling. I think you'll agree that your advertiser cares more about how many eyeballs she is reaching and how many of those people are visiting her location than she does about how many people viewed her commercial on large or small screens. Still, it's good information to have because it allows us to optimize to the devices that are working best. Here's a video performance report that shows placement, impressions, and completion rates. By the way, you're only seeing the top half of this report, but when I scroll to the bottom, there are 448 domains upon which this ad was delivered, and 444 of those show better than 90% completion rate, and none are lower than 83%. The average completion rate for this campaign was 98.5%. Or said another way, nearly all OTT CTV ads are seen nearly all the way through. For advertisers who have ever purchased skippable pre-roll in the past, this is huge. And I can't even begin to tell you what this means to linear TV buyers who have really no way of knowing if their commercials were viewed or fast-forwarded on a DVR. Here's some data that shows on which CTV device the ads were delivered. Interesting, but I'm not sure how important this is to the performance of a campaign. Still, there's probably some data head at Simplify who is using these metrics to improve campaigns through optimization. This campaign leverages keyword search targeting, so there's a list of the keywords used to build this relevant audience. Now, personally, I love this report because it allows you to say to your advertiser something like, "We showed ads for your furniture store to people who had searched for or read online content about furniture, rugs, tables, sofas, mattresses, recliners, chairs, and lots of other things that you sell." If this isn't the exact right audience to show your ads to, I don't know what is. In fact, I would challenge that if you have an advertiser who complains about ad delivery on domains they've never heard of, this is the report to counter that objection. Now you can say, "No, Mrs. Advertiser, I've never actually watched Sony's Crackle channel either. But what I can tell you is that the people we showed your ads to on Crackle had done some kind of online research for furniture before we showed them your ad. So who cares what they were watching, or if you or I have never personally watched Crackle? Here's what an addressable delivery report looks like. So basically, if you sold that demographic audience as part of your targeting, you should get a report like this. As you can see, it breaks out the audience they chose, in this case, ages 35 to 54, and they recycle. I don't even know what that was for, but that's pretty cool that we can do that. And it shows delivery in the state, city, zip, along with impressions, estimated cost per impression, and total spend. At the end of the day, every advertiser is going to want some kind of reporting. For the linear buyer who isn't used to all this data, or the performance that can be measured with OTT CTV, this should be very exciting and a great way to get them to leap into this new world of advertising. Okay, so in the reporting section, you can already see some of the performance metrics in detail. Impressions delivered, reach, delivery, keywords, devices, all good stuff. Now let's discuss probably the biggest performance metric and the main reason an advertiser will invest in OTT CTV. But first, I want to tell you about a Google Analytics strategy that I ran across way back in 2014. The company Nest was trying to determine the impact their TV commercials had at the time. So they used Google Analytics to watch for spikes in traffic. And they found that the ads drove immediate and dramatic increases in searches, especially on mobile. They were even able to determine which ads and programs performed the best. Simply measuring search traffic against the different time slots and programs when they ran their ads allowed Nest to optimize their campaign and show its best performing ads at times when they were most likely to drive search traffic. Now, understand, no one was clicking their TV commercials, of course. This was anecdotal evidence that if an ad ran, let's say at 12:30 on Days of Our Lives, and they saw a spike in web traffic at 12:30, they gave the commercial the credit for that traffic. Clever, right? But also pretty cumbersome. Imagine integrating those two pieces of data from different sources that really weren't able to talk to one another. Fast forward to 2021, and OTT CTV can measure both online and offline visits. But wait, you say, you still can't click a TV commercial, even one that is being delivered on Pluto on a computer, let alone on a big screen TV. As for offline attribution, it's not like people are carrying their big old TVs around into their advertiser store. So how does the attribution work? Let's say that I see a Simplify ad campaign for a local furniture store on my big screen TV. I'm interested enough to grab one of my devices, like a laptop, so I can visit the advertiser's webpage to learn more about their big sale or whatever it is that the commercial is promoting. The pixel on their site recognizes that my visit came from a device that is cross-device matched to the CTV where their ad was delivered. And so, an ad delivered on a big TV led to a confirmed website visit, aka online attribution. Offline attribution starts out the same way. I delivered the ad on my big TV, but this time I'm compelled to go to the furniture store in person. I don't go anywhere without my smartphone, so the minute I enter their store, where they of course have a geofence built, aka a conversion zone, my phone is seen and counted as one of those that was cross-device matched to the CTV where the ad was delivered. And voila, verified offline attribution. You can complicate this story all day with explanations. Well, exclamations too. Well, this is exciting. With explanations about pixels and GPS lat longs and geofences and cross-device matching, but the story is really pretty simple. OTT CTV does something that linear TV can't. It can measure online and offline visits. And with that, I'm going to let you get back to work. But wait, don't leave me yet. I have a TV-related dad joke for you. You ready for this? Okay. What did Master Yoda say when he saw himself on a 4K TV? HDMI. Okay, don't forget, a recording of this webinar, along with the deck, a transcript, and the sample reports I shared with you, will be available in Bullseye under the Simplify webinar series. Tune in next week for Ann on the Streets, our monthly podcast that comes out on the third Monday of each month and is also archived in Bullseye. If you have questions related to your campaigns, please reach out to your local Simplify account manager. And if you have questions about training, Bullseye content, or if you'd like to find out if your team qualifies for a live training via Zoom, please reach out to training@Simplify. Finally, if you don't mind, if you have time, could you take 2 minutes to complete our survey at simplifysurvey.com? Let us know how we're doing and what we can do better. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Now go out there and do something awesome.